Around Holy Week, the Aboriginal people, the Innu, go to the country for 10 days. And in the country, their life is very different. Because in the country, well, now in Natwashish, there's no alcohol. But in the country, there never was alcohol because they knew that that they needed to have their wits about them in the country. Alcohol would mean death, you know, and alcohol and drugs. So they're out there, it's alcohol and drugs free. And they would go for 10 days, and this was around the time of Holy Week, and they would celebrate the holy days in a huge tent, a very big tent, and on the ground of the tent were spruce boughs. So, and in the middle of the tent was an aluminum stove with a chimney that went up through the center of the tent. And it smelled like Christmas because of the spruce boughs. And the Aboriginal people would come in and they would kneel or sit. You know, they can sit on their legs. I don't know how they do that, but they can do it. They've been doing it all their life, and their legs do it. Mine don't, but so we had the Easter celebrations there, and I just want to tell you that I had to decide what was I going to wear. What do you wear? So I said, well, I'm the bishop, and I should dress as a bishop would dress anywhere in any parish. So, because these are my people. And so I brought with me all the outfit, you know, all the gear, the crozier and the mitre, the big mitre and the pectoral cross and all the vestments. And when they came into the tent, what was standing there? Me. and you could see them turning to one another and say, what is this? What have we here? And Father Chris, of course, was kneeling at the altar, because it was a low altar, and with his sitting as they do, sitting on his haunches with his owl and his caribou stole, and they would look over to him and he would go anyway, we celebrated the Easter Vigil. And I just want to say this about the Easter Vigil now. I learned something. You know, I have celebrated many Easter Vigils in my life. I'm a priest for 35 years now, so I've celebrated many Easter Vigils, but I learned something on this Easter Vigil. The first thing you do at the Easter Vigil is you bless the Easter fire. And you probably have gathered outside your own parishes and stood around while we bless the fire. The fire is blessed. And so the first thing I did was bless this fire that was already burning and that was warming up the tent. And when you're out in the wilderness, like out in the country, you need fire. Without a fire burning in your tent, you're going to freeze to death. Yeah. Because it was 60 below outside the tent. So you bless the fire that blesses us. Fire. And then we bless the candle. We bless the Paschal candle, the light of Christ. And I thought, you know, light is so important. You need light. And there are flashlights, there are lamps you know that you have in your tent. You bless the light that blesses us. And the light, we say, the light of Christ, it blesses us. We're blessed by that light. And then we bless the Easter water. Well, when we were out in the country, you go to the lake, you put a hole in the lake, you put a pot down, and you pull it up. And that's the water you cook with, that's the water you wash with, and that's the water you drink. And it's as fresh as you can want. So we bless that water. This is Easter water that you use for blessing and that you use for baptism. And we bless the water that blesses us. And then we bless, of course, we consecrate the bread and wine, the body and blood of Christ. And and we bless the food that blesses us. And I learned something. The Easter Vigil it's about life. These are the elements you need to live. Fire, light, water, food. Without any one of them, how do you live? So this whole vigil is about life, and I learned that from the Innu people. And I'm happy to tell you that, because the next time you celebrate the Easter Vigil, you will remember this. You will remember that these elements are just important for life, and this is all about life. The whole vigil, our whole faith, is about the fullness of life. And I want to say this. Father Chris asked one of the Aboriginal people, he said, we had, first of all I should say to you, we had brought bologna, a big round of bologna from the store in Happy Valley Goose Bay, probably paid for by Catholic Missions in Canada. And we had had fried bologna and bologna sandwiches and fried bologna and bologna sandwiches. So Chris finally said to one of the young hunters, one young Aboriginal people, his name is Eric, he said, we would really enjoy a piece of caribou, because Chris is a very good cook. So he said, tomorrow you will have your caribou. Good. Chris was all happy about that. Early the next morning, we heard a skidoo pulling up to the tent, by the tent, and so Chris went out, and I heard all kinds of exclamation, and then he called me out. And there, along behind the skidoo, there's a ski trailer. It's called a comatic, and in the comatic was one entire caribou. And his four legs, two legs, four legs up like this. And Eric said, here is your caribou. And he said to me, he said, touch it. He said, it's still warm. It was. So I'm kind of expressing delight. You can imagine my delight. And I said to Chris, trying to say to Chris subtly, and without what would you say, embarrassing, not embarrassing, but upsetting the hunter. And I said to Chris, who is going to carve this? And so Chris asked him, he said, Eric, who's going to carve this up? And Eric said, oh, it's your caribou. You can carve it up. I said, Chris, get rid of it. We don't need all this. We don't need this meat. I said, there's only two of us. And you know, the cardinal sin for an Innu is wasting caribou. So Chris said to him, he said, Eric, we're only two. We couldn't possibly. It would be a waste to give us this entire caribou. So Eric took the caribou away, and he said, all we need is a piece. Give us a piece. So Eric went, and a little later in the morning, we went over to Eric's tent, and there was the caribou, strung up, and people were coming with their skidoos, stopping, and Eric was carving pieces of meat off the caribou and giving them pieces of meat, and he said to them, he was saying to them, the bishop is sharing his caribou with the community. Now he made, I can tell you, he made grace out of my, my disdain, my whatever you want to, preciousness. He made it an act of graceful generosity. He did. First of all, he shot the caribou. Secondly, he brought the caribou. Thirdly, he cut up the caribou. And fourthly, he told them that I was giving it to them. I was making the offering. So I want to say this to you. You are supporting Catholic Missions in Canada. And they are supporting the proclamation of the gospel. And that is grace for them. That is grace for the community. And they are participating in that in their way. I mean, this young man was doing what you do in an Aboriginal way, in a native way. He was being generous. He was being graceful. He was putting himself out. And you know, I can only say that they are good people. We don't hear the good news about the people, but they are good people, and that's what Innu means, the people. We don't hear the good news about the people, but there is good news, and they are equally generous, and they are equally good to ourselves. And I would say this, as I was going home, I thought, you know, they really took care of me. They really took care of me. Because I was out of my environment. I was in a very unfamiliar environment. And I wonder if I would have been as caring and as generous to them when they are out of their environment in the city. You know, this isn't their environment. And I just wonder if I would have provided the kind of support that they provided for me. Now, I can go on for an hour. I told Father Philip, how long do you want me to talk? An hour, and he said, no. But I want you to know that these are wonderful